The war in Gaza has entered another critical and complex phase. As new ceasefire negotiations are scheduled to begin in Egypt on Monday, both United States and Israeli officials have confirmed they will not participate directly in the talks, a move that has sparked confusion, disappointment, and renewed concern about the future of peace efforts in the region. For months, the world has watched a devastating conflict unfold between Israel and Hamas, with repeated cycles of escalation, brief truces, and renewed violence. This latest development signals growing divisions, not only between the warring sides, but also among the international mediators trying to end the bloodshed. The Gaza Strip remains under continuous bombardment. Israeli airstrikes and artillery fire have intensified across multiple regions, including Rafah, Khan Yunis, and Gaza City. Entire neighborhoods have been flattened. Hospitals are running out of power and medical supplies. Thousands of civilians remain trapped under rubble, while hundreds of thousands are displaced with nowhere safe to go. Despite the escalating violence, Egypt has once again stepped forward to host ceasefire negotiations, hoping to mediate a lasting truce between Israel and Hamas. Egyptian officials, alongside Qatar and Turkey, have worked tirelessly to prepare the framework for talks, including proposals for a phased ceasefire, hostage exchanges, and humanitarian aid corridors. But with U.S. and Israeli representatives refusing to attend, the talks risk losing their most influential participants. According to diplomatic sources, both Washington and Tel Aviv have decided to pause direct involvement for strategic and political reasons. For Israel, internal divisions are deepening. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu faces immense pressure from hardline members of his coalition who oppose any truce that leaves Hamas intact. These factions want the military campaign to continue until total victory. They fear that participating in Egyptian talks could lead to compromises viewed as weakness. At the same time, Israel is also under growing domestic and international pressure to scale back its offensive. Families of Israeli hostages held in Gaza have staged demonstrations, demanding a deal that prioritizes their loved ones' return, even if it means a temporary ceasefire. Netanyahu is caught between two forces, the military hawks demanding destruction of Hamas, and the families pleading for peace. In the United States, the Biden administration faces political turbulence as well. Public opinion has shifted sharply against the prolonged violence. Protests on U.S. campuses and in major cities have criticized Washington's continued support for Israel amid rising civilian casualties. The White House is now walking a fine line, pushing Israel privately to de-escalate while maintaining public solidarity with its ally. Sources suggest Washington's decision to skip the Egyptian round may be a tactical pause, allowing regional mediators to take the lead while the U.S. reassesses its diplomatic leverage. Egypt remains one of the few nations maintaining active communication channels with both Hamas and Israel. Cairo's intelligence service has hosted dozens of negotiation rounds in recent months, often behind closed doors. Egyptian officials have proposed a three-stage plan: an immediate humanitarian pause to allow aid trucks and fuel into Gaza, a hostage exchange and prisoner release, and a framework for a long-term ceasefire, including gradual Israeli withdrawal and guarantees for Gaza's reconstruction. However, without direct Israeli or American participation, even Egypt's influence could face limits. Mediators can relay messages, but real decisions must be approved by the warring sides. And that's where the process often breaks down. On the other side of the talks, Hamas leaders have publicly stated they are open to conditional negotiations, but only if Israel halts its bombing campaign first. They have accused Israel of using peace talks as a cover for continued military operations. According to sources in Doha, Hamas is seeking international guarantees for any ceasefire deal, fearing Israel might resume attacks once hostages are released. The group is also demanding that displaced families be allowed to return to northern Gaza and that reconstruction funds be managed by neutral parties rather than through Israeli oversight. By showing up to the Egyptian talks, even without Israel, Hamas hopes to project itself as a legitimate political actor rather than just a militant organization. This narrative plays strongly among its regional allies and supporters across the Arab world. The humanitarian crisis in Gaza has reached catastrophic levels. UN agencies report that more than 80% of Gaza's population has been displaced. Over 50,000 people have been injured and tens of thousands killed since the start of the war. Food, clean water, and electricity are scarce. Many families live in makeshift shelters, surviving on limited rations. Aid convoys have faced repeated blockages. Even when permitted entry, they are often delayed for security checks or targeted by ongoing strikes nearby. International aid workers describe the situation as hellish, warning of an impending famine if the conflict persists through winter. The absence of a ceasefire not only prolongs the suffering, but also complicates humanitarian logistics. Without a stable truce, aid groups cannot safely operate or deliver supplies. The international community has reacted with frustration and disbelief over the U.S. and Israeli absence. European nations, including France and Spain, have called for urgent participation of all key parties to make progress. The United Nations has urged the U.S. to use its influence responsibly, reminding Washington that no peace deal can succeed without the active involvement of the world's most powerful actors. Meanwhile, regional powers like Iran, Turkey, and Qatar have expressed mixed responses. Iran accuses the U.S. of pretending to mediate while enabling aggression. Turkey has offered to host parallel discussions, suggesting that a multi-country mediation could balance the process. In contrast, Saudi Arabia and Jordan have urged restraint on all sides, emphasizing the need for a political solution. They have also expressed concern that the absence of American engagement could embolden extremist factions and prolong instability. Behind the scenes, this conflict is more than just a military confrontation. It's a geopolitical chessboard involving multiple players. The U.S. aims to prevent the war from escalating into a regional conflict involving Lebanon, Syria, or Iran. Israel seeks to dismantle Hamas completely, but struggles to define what comes next for Gaza. Hamas wants legitimacy and survival, hoping to emerge from the conflict as a recognized resistance movement. Egypt wants to contain the violence and avoid a refugee crisis spilling over its borders. Qatar and Turkey aim to boost their diplomatic prestige as key intermediaries. The stakes couldn't be higher. The longer the war drags on, the harder it becomes to rebuild trust, and the greater the risk of a wider regional confrontation. In both Israel and Gaza, people are exhausted. In Tel Aviv, families of hostages have camped outside the Prime Minister's residence, holding photos of their loved ones. Their voices crack with emotion as they call for real negotiations, not excuses. Many blame political infighting for the delay. In Gaza, families express despair and anger. "We hear about ceasefires every week," says one survivor, "but the bombs never stop." Civilians are losing faith that international diplomacy can bring them peace. The emotional toll is immense. Children have been deeply traumatized by the constant explosions, and parents are losing hope that they will ever return home. Psychologists warn that an entire generation may grow up under the shadow of perpetual war. The absence of U.S. and Israeli officials doesn't mean talks will stop completely. Egyptian and Qatari mediators will continue indirect communication through intelligence channels. Israeli and American representatives are expected to monitor developments remotely, possibly rejoining later rounds if progress seems promising. But the immediate prospects are grim. Without all key players in the same room, real breakthroughs are unlikely. Still, small steps can make a difference. Humanitarian pauses, prisoner exchanges, and confidence-building measures might pave the way for a broader agreement later. History shows that even indirect negotiations can lay the groundwork for eventual peace, as long as political will exists. As the talks open in Egypt without two of the most influential parties, the world is left asking, is peace still possible? The war in Gaza has become a global moral crisis. It has exposed the limits of military power, the fragility of diplomacy, and the heavy cost of political pride. Every delay means more destruction, more lives lost, and deeper divisions that may take generations to heal. If there is one truth that echoes across the region tonight, it is this: a ceasefire cannot succeed without commitment, without courage to talk and to listen. The suffering will only continue. The question now is not whether peace talks will happen. They already are. The question is, who will show up to make them count?